I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show.
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
Big Money Siege. Big Money CJ. Do you remember that episode we did a couple months ago called Contenders and Pretenders? Do you remember that episode?
See, I've forgotten it, but there's a few people in my Twitter mentions that haven't allowed me to completely forget it. So I'm aware that you made me mid-season or so label some contenders and pretenders, and there's a few people out there that don't like the choices I made back then.
Well, I'd like to think that there were some choices you were pretty right about. There's actually one pick that, I remember like taking down all the notes. There was one team you actually were listing as a pretender, and then you changed your mind and said that they were a contender, and your gut feeling might actually have been right all along. But I want to hold that thought for a second because I want to get to some other news and notes before we get to contenders and pretenders. This is what we call a tease in this business. Is that cool?
That's good with me. I mean, yeah, like all these people coming back to me, like, you said my team's a pretender. Do you have second thoughts? Well, now I can express any second thoughts I may have.
Okay, I'll give you more time to marinate on those second thoughts. In the meantime, this is our first opportunity to talk about Auston Matthews scoring 60 goals. We wouldn't be a quote-unquote Leafs podcast if we didn't mention Auston Matthews scoring, reaching the milestone. So any general thoughts on Auston doing the damn thing? 60 goals for the Toronto Maple Leafs own Auston Matthews.
Well, counterpoint would be we wouldn't be an NHL podcast if we didn't talk about the first player to do this in 10 years. So
that is true.
I don't know that we're playing too much to the Leafs crowd with this, but, fairly dramatic. I would say that he did that because, I'm not convinced the Leafs are going to play him on Friday night in their final regular season game. And so, we'll never know. I guess maybe if he had stayed stuck at 59, maybe they would have allowed him to play that game. But the fact he got the 2 goals against Detroit to get to that point on Tuesday, you could see what a cool moment it was for the team. Even Kyle Dubas is up in the box pumping his fist. It's an individual achievement. Obviously, it's one that will kind of cement Austin's place, I think, with the organization to a certain degree, just getting to that high of a bar. Something people remember for a long time. But, he was quick to point out himself that it's not the point of the season. Austin may yet still, looks like he's got the Rocket Richard wrapped up. He may yet still win the Hart Trophy, but the only trophy I think anyone in Toronto is getting too concerned about at this point in time is the shiny silver one that they're about to start competing for on Monday.
I know in our fan poll, which you can still participate in through to the end of this weekend, a lot of people already, I'm not going to say how many people, but a lot of people already are throwing their support to Auston Matthews. Maybe it has to do with where a lot of people who listen to our podcast are from, but Auston Matthews has definitely made the case to win the Hart Trophy. I know I've harped on the question a lot in the last few weeks, but like it's still not really in doubt. You're not really going to change your mind about your Hart Trophy pick at this point.
Oh, I'd say there's still a little bit of doubt in my mind. I haven't locked it in. I have my ballot now. The ballots have been distributed from the league. They're due by Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Basically, they go in before the playoffs officially start, so that nothing that happens in the playoffs can influence your vote. To me, it's either Matthews or McDavid, and I haven't solidified my picks yet. So I'll tell you what I do. The ballots actually get made public, so I mean, there'll be no. I'll explain or give you my final rationale whenever I do make that selection, but I haven't got there yet. It's hard to ignore the explosion McDavid's had here towards the finish of the season. He's had like multi-point games in like 18 out of 20 or something like that, something crazy anyway. Obviously he's going to win another scoring title. We're judging the player most valuable to his team. Where would the Oilers be without McDavid? I know it's been a good season there by and large, after the difficult middle stretch they had. I think with Matthews, scoring is just so difficult. He's scored about 10 more goals at 5-on-5 than anyone else in the league. Scoring at even strength is the toughest thing to do. Not to take away power play goals, they count the same. But that's partly what you're weighing. I think Matthews' defensive impacts will carry some of the day here. So it's going to be a tough choice. I'm not going to lie. But I'm not going to do my ballot because the last game of the essentially the last game of the regular season is Friday. I know there's the one rescheduled game. My plan is to really spend Saturday and Sunday working on the ballot and just see where we're at right at the end of the regular season. Why prejudge anything in terms of locking a decision in anywhere until seeing where the dust settles?
That's exactly how I'm approaching my ballot for the fan poll, because that's as close as I can get right now to voting on the actual.
You'll have one soon, my friend.
I hope so. That'd be nice. But in the meantime, like I'm looking at some of the options for some of the different awards, and like Auston, I get it. Like, he has the defensive play, he has the goals, but Connor McDavid, 44 goals, 122 points. My friend Rob Pizzo, who sometimes hosts the Athletic Hockey Show on Wednesdays, made this point. If you were to tell anyone that Connor McDavid, maybe before this season, that Connor McDavid would have a career best in goals and points and would not win the Hart Trophy, like, how ridiculous does that sound? We are looking at the best season from the best player in this league. And yeah, he might win a scoring title, but not win the Hart Trophy, especially with how the Oilers went through the up and down season that they had. Like, I think that's something I think people have to genuinely consider now at this point.
Fair, but if you said, what about the player that for only the third time in 25 years to hit 60 goals, and the way he did it, it's not like a lot of cheapies in there, or
that's true.
It's not a fluke. I mean, Austin scored 60 goals in 73 games. I mean, it's mind blowing. That's a better goal scoring rate than Alex Ovechkin had in any of his seasons, for example. And I'm certainly not hating on Alex Ovechkin. I'm just trying to contextualize how special that goal scoring season is. And the points are there for him too. Like, if you look at points per game, he's not that far off McDavid. So it's, the difference in the actual totals is a little bit just because of the games he missed. And, that's got to be considered too. Being able to play a whole season, that's, I mean, some luck is involved, but that's also, like, I'm not going to hold that against someone. It's an impossible pick, I think, in some ways. Like, I don't know that there is a right answer, like one right answer. I think it's possible that anyone who goes Matthews McDavid or McDavid Matthews 1-2 on their ballot, like, can you really criticize them? I mean, they're going to have their own reason for making that choice, but I'm not sure one is right or wrong. And then the other problem you have here, in a sense, it's not a problem, but these are two hot fan bases. It's two guys that play in Canadian cities. It adds an extra level of spice, and people saying the Eastern bias and all that stuff. So, I'll tell you what I pick when I pick it, but I ain't made that selection yet, brother.
Okay, so we have the episode on Monday where we're going to for sure go through each playoff series. And that is also the day when the ballots are due. Maybe on the Thursday or whenever you feel comfortable sharing their process, we will definitely go in on that. And I should also mention, so I think Sunday midnight heading into Monday, Sunday at midnight, actually, that is the deadline for the ballots for our fan poll, for people to vote in on who they think is going to win the Hart Trophy, who they think is going to win the Art Ross Trophy. We should have the link in the description. I know I've shared it on my social feed. I'll do that again for everybody else. We've had a couple hundred people, hundreds of people respond to it so far. And the responses have been very interesting. Like, Steve Dangle got mentioned in at least one of the awards, which I think is really fun. Like,
which
Steve
one?
Dangle. You know what?
Gentlemanly player?
I will save that for Monday. One last thing, just to put a bow on the Matthews McDavid talk. I think it's really fascinating that you're at a point where it's a debate now, because I feel as if, like, not too long ago, this was a no doubt Auston Matthews is winning the Hart Trophy. And I think a lot of other people might be feeling the same way. But I am excited at the prospect of it being at least somewhat of a debate. Maybe some people have already had their minds made up about Auston Matthews winning the MVP. But I love the idea of intrigue for these award races. And if there's one person who should make a game of it, it should be absolutely Connor McDavid. I don't know how many other games the Oilers have left, but, like, what if he goes off?
It was a no doubt, because it looked like he was going to score 65 or 66 or something like that.
That is true.
And it would have been hard to deny him, I think, even with the point totals that McDavid's put up. But then, he got injured, and he had a couple games that he played without scoring a goal, which this season was unusual because you pretty much expected at least a goal a game from Auston Matthews. And you're right. We come to the final. And as I say, I don't expect to see Matthews play in the Leafs final regular season game on Friday against Boston. So, what his totals are cemented more or less right now. And Connor McDavid's I'm not sure what the Oilers plan to do with his rest or not, but he might have time to add even more points on.
Can we talk about the last guy before Auston Matthews to score 60 in a season and the year that he's having at the tender age of 32? Mr. Steven Stamkos, 39 goals, 101 points. It's the first time in his NHL career he has hit the 100-point plateau. He's come close, but he actually got to do it this year. He might not win it. He's probably not going to win any individual awards, but how cool is it to see Steven Stamkos accomplish this? He's one goal away from 40.
It's unreal. I mean, his 14th NHL season to have his best points, and it's not like he already had a career that's going to take him to the Hall of Fame. Yes. So, I mean, that's saying something. I mean, look, some of it is due to the fact, as we've talked about, that this is a season where production's been up. There's sort of more points for everyone, but that shouldn't diminish what's happened with Steven Stamkos this year. And I liked what he said. He feels like he's maybe proven something again. And, it's a reminder that no matter what you achieve, in his case, the 2 Stanley Cups, the number of goals and points he scored in this league, he doesn't really have anything that needs to be proven, but he still feels like that drive to get there. And what's been especially impressive, I don't know if you saw the tweet I put out, but he was at 80 points 7 games and 13 days ago. And then all of a sudden he's at 100 points because he has 20 points in those 7 games, which is just ridiculous. Or ridic, as the kids are saying.
I was waiting for that.
So that's
I knew you were going to bring that up at some point. Might as well bring up the sunglasses while you're at it too.
No, those will reappear at some point. Maybe when I'm down in Tampa covering the first round and we do a pod on location, that might be sunglasses CJ at the Tiki Bar. But
I can't wait for that. But anyway.
But yeah, well, I mean, it's only apropos given actually we're talking about Steven Stamkos. So, what a great season for him. I think the Lightning, honestly, they looked like they were asleep or something for a month. And then all of a sudden it's just like the bear is awoken and they are formidable. And look, it's what the New York Islanders, I guess, are the last team that won 3 straight Stanley Cups as part of their run of 4 in a row in the early 80s. I wouldn't bet against the Lightning. Let's not cut any suspense here. They're going to be a contender when we get to the contender pretender list.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I was really worried about how you were looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning. You know what's funny, actually? On the Jesse Blake Sports Report, I was actually a guest on that show. And tell me if I'm wrong here, because I tried to,
Is there a show you're not on?
I've actually never been on the Athletic Support Show, which has Arpin Bastard and Marc-Antoine Godin, the actual Canadiens podcast for the Athletic. That's the one show I haven't been on yet.
Right. But you're a media mogul, man. Like, you're literally on every show I ever see. You're ubiquitous.
I've heard someone use that term before. I consider that a compliment. Thank you.
It's not a shot. It's just an observation.
I appreciate that. And it completely derailed my train of thought of where I wanted to go. Okay, now I remember. On the Jesse Blake Sports Report, Jesse invited me on to give his top 5 teams he thinks are most likely to win the Stanley Cup. And you can listen to the episode to hear the actual 5 he came up with. But at the beginning, he tried to make the point that Tampa and Toronto can be on the top 5 list together. And I was like, no, you can't have both of them on the list at the same time because they're literally going to clash with each other. I mean, it looks like it in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, but logically you can. No, okay. You can, because you might say, I don't know who's going to win that series, but whoever wins that series has a great chance to win the cup.
But then again, because he was doing it in order too. I mean, depending on who you have above the other, that kind of goes to your slant of who you think could win. I mean, I guess that doesn't really matter.
I mean, I guess Jesse's a Leafs fan, so I suppose he had them a little higher in the Lightning.
Yeah, I don't remember where he had them initially, but I tried to sell him on the point that, like, you can't have both. You can't say both teams are likely to win the Stanley Cup if they're going to clash with each other, at least in the first round. Even if you're going to have people clash with each other at some point in the playoffs, like having 2 teams who are for sure going to be in direct conflict with each other off the hop, like, it didn't make sense to me to have them clash with each other in the top 5.
Right.
Yeah. But you think it's logical.
I'm glad you're not making me pick a top 5. I think that would be a really difficult task. like there's 10 teams that can win the Stanley Cup. I mean, technically there's 16, but there's 10 that it's hard to choose between them, honestly. Like this is a top heavy league right now. But the thing is now we're dealing with the teams that all had great seasons. And there's a lot of teams out there that had a great season.
Yeah. And I get it. Like to being beyond, I was trying to think about it myself, like Colorado, Calgary, Tampa Bay. Those are 3 teams I know for sure I have in my top 5.
Right. But do you have Florida? Do you have Carolina?
Yeah, I have Florida in there. Carolina. I thought about putting Carolina in there. I put Minnesota above Carolina. I'm really high on the Wild this year. And maybe that's a surprise, but I'm really high on the Wild this year. They really
Minnesota. I mean, I'm high on the Wild too. They're going to be another one that I'll put into my contender list when we get to that. And I'm going to spoil the whole list before we get there. But they do have to go through Colorado in that division. I'm not saying they can't, but it's tough. I think it could make for an awesome playoffs though, because there's going to be some quote unquote upsets, I think, just because let's face it, the gap is not that large. Like no one's probably that high on Washington right now, for example. They're at the bottom of the East. First of all, they already had a 100+ point season. And if they beat someone, a higher ranked team in the first round, would we be that surprised? Like I wouldn't be. I'm not saying I'm picking that, but they could knock off someone unexpectedly. I mean, the first round is the toughest. I mean, when you're heavily favored, sometimes those teams that get 120 points lose in round 1. We've seen it multiple times in the past.
Is there a playoff series? And I should phrase this like this. Let's say you didn't have to cover any of the playoff series in the first round. Which playoff series are you looking forward to the most?
Well, I don't know who's playing yet. I mean, it's only 2 out of 8 are set, right?
Okay, fine.
So, I think Tampa, Toronto is my easiest answer because there's enough variability in the others. Like if we were going to get a Battle of Alberta in round 1, that would be it. But it looks like Edmonton and Calgary won't be able to play until round 2 at the earliest. But I live in Toronto, and so maybe it's my bias coming through. But it's like this: you have this team. This is their 6th year in a row going to the playoffs with a team that actually, like, their core players, obviously over those 6 seasons have gotten better because they're getting older and they haven't won a round yet. And now they got to go against a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, more or less likely. I mean, there's still an outside chance they play Boston, but I don't see it happening because I think Tampa will get 1 more point. But that's going to be pretty compelling one way or another. And I really don't know how it's going to go. So that one has my attention. I have to see where the other ones land. I mean, really,
that's fair.
You're looking at upset potential would be compelling matchups. It looks like if Minnesota and St. Louis play, like those teams have played a couple great games recently, and they're 2 teams that are going to be probably 110-point teams. I mean, it's going to be an awesome 2 weeks. I hope the weather stays shitty here because then it'd be more reason to just stay inside and watch hockey all day and night.
I mean, why not have the weather be nice and have the TV moved outside on some back patio or whatever? I don't know.
All right, you're thinking I don't have that kind of arrangement in my life, but that would be awesome if I did.
Oh man,
my buddy James Watt out in Calgary. Whenever I go visit him in the summer, we're always watching a Jays game outside. He gets a whole setup. He's got a hot tub now. It's an elite lounging and watching sports setup. I don't have anything like that here in Toronto.
He's probably watched a lot of Flames games with that top line. And one thing I'm rooting for before the end of the year, I hope Johnny Gaudreau gets to 40 goals. And so they could have a top line of 40 goal scorers. How many times has that happened?
I have no idea. Probably the Edmonton Oilers in the heyday had that because, between Messier, Gretzky, Curry, but yeah, it wouldn't have happened too often. Just to have 3 on your team is insane, let alone 3 guys that play together on the same line. There's only one puck.
Close.
There's only one puck on the ice. How do each of them have a chance to shoot it into the net 40 times?
And this is a team that plays Daryl Sutter hockey, which, grinding. They have that a little bit of a defensive identity, but they have 3 guys. 2 guys at 40 goals right now. A guy on the verge of getting there, and Andre Mangiapane. I mean, he might not get there, but he's at 35. They can score goals. This is a really good team.
Yeah, they score goals at a great level, and I believe they have the best goals against in the league too, or they're 1 or 2 anyway. And they got a great goaltender. I mean, that's Calgary. Calgary could be. I'm not going to put any adjectives on them because I'm not trying to not trying to bring any hexes into play, but they're a team to me that looks playoff ready, playoff built.
Yeah. There's a C word you can add. We'll get to that segment eventually. We keep teasing it. The Vegas Golden Knights are eliminated from playoff contention. Are you stomping on their grave like everyone else's?
No, I mean, that's bad karma, man. And
that's actually, yeah.
I've made the point. Look, they have an interesting offseason ahead. They still have cap troubles. They're going to have to rejig the, parts of the team. But I mean, there's still just enough there that I think they'll probably be one of the best teams in the league next year. Just my belief. I know that there's issues, and the whole Leonard situation doesn't look good. They do have to figure out how to make the money all fit in a world where they're imagining everybody being healthy. Eichel at what he makes, Stone at what he makes, Pietrangelo, right down the list with all their high paid guys. But that's a core to me that is going to be pretty scary next year. And so I get it, because they have sort of they went from sort of a lovable team to sort of a heel. Like, we've had sort of a wrestling turn in 5 seasons with that organization. But I think the mothership will be back next year. And so I guess if you're a Sharks fan, or if you feel some rivalry with Vegas, I get why you're reveling in this, but I think it's going to be short-term pain for that organization.
The mothership. That's what we're calling the Vegas Golden Knights now. The mothership. Do we have to clear that song? Producer Nick, please make a note of that. Do we have to clear that song for this?
What song are you talking about? That's just me humming along in my mind.
That's actually a very good point and a good way to get out of that tricky question. People, it's Julian here with a message from Athletic Greens. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient and daily nutrition, especially heading into the flu and cold season. Ugh, it's not a fun time. In just one scoop and a cup of water every day, that's it. That's literally it. That's amazing. No need for a million different other pills and supplements and all that extra stuff. Athletic Greens is it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens will give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your very first purchase. All you have to do, visit athleticgreens.com/Johnston. It's CJ's last name. How easy, it doesn't get any easier than that. athleticgreens.com/Johnston to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. So we know with the Golden Knights, they had to go through a shootout with Chicago, but they were pretty much already eliminated when that Dallas Stars game against Arizona went to OT. There's some other team that benefited from that game that I'll get to in a moment. But the shootout, I used to like the shootout. I don't really like the shootout as much anymore. And Pierre LeBrun, our good friend / colleague, asked a handful of GMs about it, and 19 of them, of the 32, in favor of scrapping shootouts for an extended 3-on-3. But there are some different provisions. Some were very high on time being limited, and some wanted unlimited 3-on-3. And I think at least one GM wanted a tie. Remember ties? Remember when they were a thing? How do you feel about the shootout? And how do you feel about the GMs responding the way that they did to LeBron's poll?
Well, I think the shootout has sort of become a bit of a necessary evil. I personally don't like it. I find it an unsatisfying way to get to an ending when I've been in the rink and it happens. I didn't do my homework on this because, it's the last week of school here, and I didn't.
We trying to get out.
But my point is my impression actually is that there were less shootouts this year than it felt like ever before. I don't think there's that many games getting to a shootout, but the ones that do, it's just a way to end the game. And this has been kicked around by the general managers in years past, and ultimately I don't think the NHLPA is in favor of extending 3-on-3 overtime, because basically teams play about 6 skaters, maybe 9 skaters in 3-on-3. But not even half their skating roster sees the ice in those situations. And if you have an overtime that goes 10 minutes, it's just a lot of extra wear and tear over a season. And so I don't see this changing. I think, Pierre must have been looking for something to stir it up or something. I don't know the impetus for this, because I really just think that it's something we have to live with. But I still like 3-on-3 overtime. That's been one of the things that was brought in by the league. I more often than not, it's exciting. There's the odd one where it ends up being sort of a keep away game with not end-to-end action, but I find it generally exciting, and I find it generally ends the game in overtime. So, personally, if there was no one else's considerations, if the NHLPA didn't have to have a say in this, I would say, yeah, keep 3-on-3 overtime going and eliminate the shootout. But I just think practically there's 82 games, there's travel, there's this, there's that. They have to call it somewhere. And so we'll keep living with the shootout.
If you had to guess, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but I guess when do I not? If you had to guess the percentage of games that have ended in 3-on-3 overtime this season, what would your guess be? What percentage?
I would guess 80%.
80%. The answer is 65% of extra time games that end in 3-on-3 OT. I mean, in the last few years, it's actually within the range between 61 and 68. I guess if we're looking at between 2015, 2016 to now, a lot of games that have ended in 3-on-3 within that range of time. But 65 for this season through games that were played on Wednesday. 65% of games in extra time that end in 3-on-3. That is the rate for that. I mean, I would like 80%, but I don't think we are exactly there yet. The next thing I wanted to bring up, the Canadiens, because of that Arizona Coyotes victory over the Dallas Stars. As a result, the Montreal Canadiens have clinched last place in the NHL, securing the best possible draft lottery odds for the draft this summer in Montreal, which means Montreal's getting the number 1 overall pick, right? That's what it means. That's what a lot of people seem to think it means.
That would be exciting. I mean, with the draft in their own building after a season like this one that had a lot of downs in it. I know there's a brief bit of hope there, seeing Cole Caulfield get his game going under Marty St. Louis. Things certainly changed, but the NHL has actually made it. They've tried to disincentivize teams finishing last overall, so the odds aren't even what they were 5 or 6 years ago of getting the number 1 overall pick. But what has happened is now only the top 2 picks are up for the lottery, quote unquote. And so the farthest Montreal could fall is to the 3rd overall pick, which is maybe just as significant with finishing last. I mean, this creates a scenario where Arizona could fall to the 4th pick now instead. So, that's where the comfort comes in. If you're Montreal, you're getting the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd overall pick. They got a couple other first rounders from some trades. I would expect you'll see more trades made. So they've got a lot of ammo now to start retooling things and adding players to the organization. And yeah, with the draft being held in the building, I mean, I'm not cheering for any outcome, but that would be a pretty good story and would be pretty exciting for the fan base in your city. But if they could turn those odds into it, but like the problem is there's higher odds that they won't have the 1st overall pick than that they will. And so that'll be a nervy night when the balls are dropping for the hardcore Habs fans.
You broke the news about the date for the draft lottery. When is it again?
I did it, and I actually forget. That's bad.
Oh, no way. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean for that to happen.
But I did break that. I did break that news, and I can quickly find the text because I remember who tipped me off. May 10th.
Okay, May 10th.
May 10th for the draft lottery.
Okay, sorry, I did. Yeah, but
time remains a flat circle, buddy. I don't know what day it is. Like it's. I'm glad we have the group chat where you're like, hey, we're doing the pod tomorrow. I'm like, oh my God, it's Thursday again.
Yes. And thank God you have your good coffee to keep you awake when you do these shows.
So good. They named it twice.
Exactly. All right. I've run through all of the news and notes that I could possibly go through. I've delayed this long enough. Are you ready to revisit Contenders and Pretenders?
I'm ready.
All right. So one thing I realized from when we did that last episode, there were 18 teams that were mentioned because there were about a handful of them that were tied for a wild card spot at the time we did that show, I believe in the Western Conference. One of them happened to be the Colorado Avalanche, who we all know have turned into the team they've become now. These are the teams you listed as contenders at the time: Carolina, Florida, Toronto, Tampa Bay, Minnesota, St. Louis, Winnipeg, Calgary, Vegas, and Colorado. Vegas is the team that I believe you initially had as a pretender, then, or maybe I made a mistake or scratched it off, and then then we put them in the contender pile. And well, I mean, they're not going to make the playoffs, but Vegas, Winnipeg, Only 2 teams off? I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It's decent. I mean, Winnipeg is my biggest bogey there, I would say, because honestly, if Vegas had to find a way to sneak in this week, if they had just got a couple more victories, I'd probably still have them as a contender. And maybe that, I mean, look, the whole Leonard situation changes how I view that, actually, the more I think through it. But yeah, Winnipeg is my big miss in that group. But, I think it was all in all pretty fair.
I think so. These are the pretenders: Washington, New York Rangers, Columbus, Pittsburgh, Edmonton, Anaheim, San Jose, and Nashville. I mean, even if there are some teams that obviously missed the playoffs in that list and everyone else made it, but I don't see anyone in
the key point is they were in a playoff spot when we recorded it. So the fact that I identified a couple that missed, give me my props, bro.
Hey, dude, of course I'll give you your props. Look, you know a thing or two about that hockey. I'm not going to disrespect you on that. And even the teams that are in there that are in pretenders, I mean, who out of that team do you think is like the best pretender out of that list that really has? I know you said there's 10 teams that could win the cup, but like who in that list do you think you would be like give me a mulligan, let me move them into a contender?
Well, did you mention Boston? I would be.
Boston was not mentioned at all. They were within 2 points of a wild card spot at the time we recorded. And so was New Jersey, Philly, and Detroit.
The 2 teams I'd like to upgrade most would be Boston and Edmonton, with the Rangers probably being third. I would not sleep on Boston. I know that they're maybe finishing in a wild card position. So they're going to have maybe Florida or Carolina in round 1, depending on how it all falls. But they're just, they drive possession. They've had so much success. Goaltending's been pretty good. It's holding in. Like I would have Boston as a scary team. And Edmonton, I've come around a little bit on the Oilers. Obviously, we probably were picking that around the time they were spiraling. Dave Tippett gets fired. Jay Woodcroft comes in. They have the 4th best record in the league since he was hired, I believe. Some of that's due to goaltending. Look, like the Oilers' goaltending has come back to life. Give them credit. But, I think they have maybe the best save percentage in that time. And that certainly wasn't the case when Dave Tippett was coaching. And so, Mike Smith's riding a 9-game winning streak, as personal 9-game winning streak as we're recording this. He's got like a .950 save percentage in those games. I still have some concerns / question marks, but I mean, there's a number of teams on the contender list that the goaltending isn't a sure thing. So I've got Edmonton on a contender list, and I got Boston up there too. And I'm not sure if you're going to let me put a third up. I'd probably put the Rangers in there as well.
You're willing to do it. You're able to do whatever you want. If I remember correctly, at the time you said what you said about the Oilers, I think it was just on the precipice of them spiraling. I think when I kept track of that in January, I was trying to find the tweet. There was like a period between November 25th when that episode happened and January 20th. They had won only 4 times in that stretch. The Arizona Coyotes won more games than the Edmonton Oilers at that point. I think you had a point. It took them making drastic changes in order for them to turn their season around.
Well, and you need saves. Like, it's not a sexy point of analysis, but teams that have a really good team can get sunk by substandard goaltending, and they got substandard goaltending at parts in the early part of the season. I mean, Mike Smith was injured for a lot of that time. Mikko Koskinen had a great run, and then it went the other way. You remember Dave Tippett kind of backed the bus over him at one point.
Yes.
Publicly. I mean, and so how you view the team looks differently when they're getting the goaltending they're getting now versus what they were getting then. We're trying to forecast what they're going to get for the next, potentially 2 months, 2 weeks to 2 months. That's a little harder to do. But I think one of the positives, for example, is that Mike Smith, because he was injured, because he has another player that starts there, he wasn't overtaxed this season. And so for someone of his age, should be reasonably fresh heading into the playoffs. And some of this is a crapshoot, man. Like it's not a perfect science. Like, I look at the East. If we want to look at contenders, pretenders a different way, I mean, you got 8 teams that got 100 points. Like, Washington is probably the biggest question mark for me of the 8 that are going to make the playoffs, mostly because their goaltending, again, just appears unsettled. Pittsburgh might be next. Pittsburgh's kind of been scuffling lately. They've had great goaltending all year, but they don't look right. But I'm not going to say those teams can't win a cup. Like, I don't think it's likely, but I'm not going to rule them out. The West, I'm feel a little better about the bottom. Like, it doesn't sound like this UC Saros injury is very good at all for Nashville, which is, a huge problem because he played so many games for them, 67 appearances this year. David Riddick's their backup. They would call Connor Ingram as well, but they just don't have someone that I think they'd be comfortable rolling through the playoffs with if he's out for the whole first round or a portion of it. They're also likely to draw Calgary in round one, which, based on the game they played this week, will be pretty feisty and exciting, but, I don't like the Predators' chances. So, I would have them as pretender status. Dallas, I'd put in the same spot. Just don't see enough pop there to get through, although, they did manage to grind their way through the Edmonton bubble back in 2020 and get to the Stanley Cup final. I don't see them as a contender. I think Los Angeles, as great as their season's been, I know they've been red hot lately too. I'm not trying to rain on any parades there, but I don't put them as a true contender at this point in time. But pretty much everybody else, I've got almost 12 teams there now by my unofficial math. So look, we've seen teams win from the bottom of the conference before in the Cup, and I could see it again. Like, yeah, it's easy to love Colorado and Florida, like teams that have had these tremendous regular seasons, but the great thing about the playoffs is there's always upsets. And so I think there's a lot of contenders, and that's not just me hedging bets. I just think it's the reality of where the league's at.
One thing I want to mention with the Edmonton Oilers, just doubling back on them really quickly here. Mike Smith has won his last 9 starts.
Yeah, bud.
Which is, I have to say, man, I thought Mike Smith was not going to be the guy. I did not realize he was that hot. And I think if you're the Edmonton Oilers, I guess you feel good about your goaltending situation. I was going to mention that. And also thank you for mentioning Los Angeles and Boston and Dallas for that, because those are the 3 teams we did not mention in that episode as well. But you're right. There are a lot of contending teams.
Well, I mean, it's one of the great things of the league. I just don't think there's that much between the top teams in the league. That's kind of what this boils down to. This year, there's a huge chasm between the best teams in the league and not. I mean, I think that, like in the East, I think the next best team is 20 points, the Islanders, 20 points out of a playoff spot. So there was literally no playoff race in the Eastern Conference this year. Like, it was non-existent. So there's a big gap between the haves and have-nots, but there's not a big gap among the haves, I don't think. That's why I'm saying don't sleep on Boston, even though they might finish 4th in the Atlantic Division this year. I could see them having a great playoffs. Patrice Bergeron has had just a marvelous season for someone at his age, someone who may not play again next year. We don't know if he's going to choose to retire at the end of his contract or come back for another year. Some of it might hinge on how likely he feels it is, or how close the team is to maybe having a chance to win a cup next year. So, I just think that it's not an easy time to be placing a bet. If you remember that the Chris Johnston Show has a bet on the Florida Panthers. So, get your rats out, Julian. We'll be throwing rats down as the Panthers march on through these playoffs. But let's face it, it's a bit of a crapshoot, I think, at the top end of the league.
I think if they win a playoff series this year, I'll bring out a rat of some sort for the show. I think that'll do it for contenders and pretenders. That was a really great exercise to do. It was a great exercise to revisit. CJ, you did pretty well on it. You should pat yourself on the back for getting some of those right. I mean, again, it's your livelihood, it's your job. You should get some of these right. But it's good to pat yourself on the back when you get stuff right.
Right, but it's not easy to do that 30 games into a season. You know what I mean? Because every year some team starts hot and falls off, and every year you get a team that maybe roars back in the second half. And so you're sorting through the noise a little bit without a huge sample size. And so, it's a fun exercise though. And no, I don't hate your favorite team. I'm just trying to call it as I see it as best I can. So that's how we got there.
CJ does not hate your favorite team. Well, maybe that's a shirt idea. Anyway, we've gone through most of what we wanted to go through. So it's that time on Thursday where we deliver some stick taps. My stick tap is not going to anyone in the NHL this week. It is actually going to something that NHL programs, whether on Sportsnet or TNT, should strive to be. The Inside the NBA panel. I don't know if you saw this earlier this week.
Oh, I saw it.
Oh, yeah. The bus?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. For those who did not know, Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets out of the playoffs at the hands of the Boston Celtics. Charles Barkley making a comment about him being a bus rider, and then Kevin Durant going to the internet and talking about, hey, maybe Charles Barkley, he's a guy who had to ride the bus a little bit himself. So inside the NBA, they torched Kevin Durant with all the memes, and at the end of their show, bought a bus for Charles to drive the rest of the panel, and they drove through a gate. I think with the faces of Shaq and Kenny, it would have been crazy if they had like Kyrie and Kevin on it. But that is high quality television. That is one of the best things I've ever seen. And look, I get, Siege, you're a big fan of what the NHL on TNT is trying to do. They still have not reached that level yet. The inside the NBA panel on TNT, it doesn't get any better than that for sports television, as far as I'm concerned. So I have to give them a stick tap, even though they have nothing to do with the NHL. Well,
let's give them time. You know, they've built the NBA side of that program over a lot of years. So let's give them time.
That is true. That is true. How do you feel about Charles Barkley guaranteeing a series victory for the Toronto Maple Leafs, by the way? I
love it. I mean, I love that he just weighs in. Like, I remember he was riding the Raptors back in 2019, saying they were going to win. I think it's fun. And, you know, Charles Barkley's a hockey fan. What's interesting is he's tight with John Cooper. And, you know, when he guaranteed that Maple Leafs series victory, I don't know if he realized that the Leafs would be going up most likely against John Cooper's Tampa Bay Lightning. So I wonder if he wants to alter that pick now that he knows that. But I remember back to 2015 Eastern Conference Final, went to Game 7 in New York, and Tampa won it. And Charles Barkley was in the Lightning dressing room partying with them after the game, supporting John Cooper. So there's some little known Barkley NHL facts. I actually hung around and got an interview with him after, which was cool.
How was that?
He was so nice, man. He was so great about it. And I don't know how many he'd had. I'm not sure if he'd been overserved in the room, but he was super pleasant and just talking about his love of hockey and how he met Coop and all that stuff. You know, my stick tap's a little more serious. So today I'm going to give it to Trip Tracy, longtime broadcaster of the Carolina Hurricanes. You know, guy I got a lot of time for, one of the faces I'm always happy to see around the league. And the team announced this week that he'd be away for the rest of the season dealing with his health, and just wanted to send Trip the best. Let him know a lot of people in the NHL have his back and are hoping the best for him. And so, Trip, we look forward to seeing you back behind the mic next season.
Absolutely. I echo those sentiments. That's a really good stick tap to make, Siege. And with that, that's going to do it for the Thursday edition of the Chris Johnston Show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for subscribing to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Be sure to check out all of the other great content you could find here at the SDPN, including all the brand new Game Over shows, stick taps to the new Game Over Toronto show as well, getting their feet off the ground earlier this week. There's one going to be going up in Calgary as well. A lot of fun stuff to come with the SDPN. We'll be back next week with more episodes here on the CJ Show. For CJ, I'm Julian, saying so long and peace.
Playoffs?
Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
The Chris Johnston Show. Inside the game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.